Constantine, a Hellblazer podcast.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Hell Talk, the podcast where we talk about the latest arc of Hellblazer that was released on the podcast. So, as always, I got Hoku with me.
Hey, everybody.
And this is an exciting moment because it is the end of the Garth Ennis run of Hellblazer, largely considered the best run of Hellblazer. I mean, that's what other people say. I'm not going to say that. I kind of like all of them. I just finished the Jamie Delano run in the Patreon, and that is fantastic. Actually, it hasn't finished on Patreon, but I finished reading it for Patreon. So, and it was fantastic. So, I can't wait to get into that as we go forward. But as I said, Garth Ennis, wow, this is like crazy. This last little story arc had a lot of stuff in it. What did you think of the Rake at the Gates of Hell story arc overall?
It was a lot to take in. There was a lot of moving parts, kind of pulling you this way and that with all the different like side stories that were going on. That were all sort of vying for John's attention, and he's just like, I can't do everything myself, damn it. So it did seem like he was trying to shove a lot of stories in. It felt like, like Spider-Man 3 when it's just like, and here's Sandman, and oh, and then Harry turns into Goblin, and then you know what? Fuck it, we're throwing Venom in there too. It just felt like they were just like stuffing as much in as possible because it's possibly the last time you're gonna see Spider-Man. In this case, who knows where John's gonna go from here? So let's just shove as many different like things for him to do and deal with. Deal with some racism. Let's deal with some riots. Let's deal with the first. Let's deal with prostitution and drugs and abuse and all that shit. Let's just throw it all in and make John figure this stuff out. Oh, and then he also has like a soul searching moment where he abuses a priest verbally. So why not throw all that stuff in there?
And he makes it with Kit, all in the same thing.
And he makes up a Kit. Like, yes, I totally forgot about that too. A lot of stuff happens in this. It was quite a run.
I didn't even think about it because when I was going over this, I was thinking of the George storyline because that's more like the forward storyline. But yeah, there's the whole storyline where there just happens to be this woman that he used to date that's a prostitute, and that's going on in the background as well. So yeah, he definitely threw in the whole kitchen sink in this arc. I'm not sure why. I feel like he could have got like just the John part of it as far as like the first and all that in 3 or 4 issues, but maybe he wanted it to feel chaotic to build up to like this moment of he wins, like it really crescendos with all these different crazy things going on into John finally winning.
He was definitely juggling chainsaws as opposed to just balls or something. Like he was really pushing each story forward and then pulling it back and then pushing forward and pulling it back, and I think both driving us up the wall of like wondering what is going on, what is going to happen with all these different things, as much so as John is. He's just like, I can't do all this at once. Why is all this happening to me? So I think it kept him on his toes, it kept us on our toes, and the fact that he was able to sort of mix and match these storylines but somehow still make it all work was quite a feat. I will say he definitely went out on a bang.
Yeah, I feel like, when I'm reading it, kind of sometimes I'm like, why did he throw this storyline in there? But it definitely does make you anxious as a reader and kind of put you on the edge of your seat, like what's going to happen, specifically with John, if he's got these 3 other things going on and he's trying to defeat the first of the fallen, who is Satan, like the literal devil, the most powerful bad guy ever. Like the stakes couldn't be higher, and he's got to deal with this other side shit, So it does like create a tension that is over the entire arc for sure. So I think it was done on purpose and done well for what it is. Probably could have had, you got to have the makeup moment with Kit. I mean, she's got to have her.
That came out of left field, man. I was not expecting that at all, especially, seeing the cover and being like, wait a second. how is he happy in the midst of all this craziness? Like, what's going on here? Who's that? Is that who I think it is? It was probably the craziest moment despite all of the chaos of just being like, oh, by the way, here's this little happy moment we're gonna give him, just to sort of like, calm things down for a moment, and then right back to the craziness.
Yeah, it's the eye of the storm, and it's funny because I reread that issue for this, and I was like, um, it was like funny to see them argue, and like still end up having like a nice moment. They have an argument in the middle where everything's going fine, then they have an argument where it's like, oh, they're gonna just fight again, and then it was like, nah, they make up. She has sex with him, or they have like a passionate night or whatever, and then she just like, all right, see you, John. It's been nice knowing you. Like she just leaves him in that nice moment, and then immediately he's back in the real world after she leaves. Like now he's got to deal with the first, and that's still hanging over him. So I think it kind of created a sense of dread, like no matter what was going on in John's other side stories on this, who he had to talk to or fix or whatever. Um, that the first of the fallen is like hanging over him, and he knew that, and kind of that was the existential dread there. So I liked that. I thought it was good. It did have a different feel than the rest of his story arcs in this run, though. So that was kind of the only difference. Is it has like a very distinct feel as compared to the rest of the run, but it is the ending, so it kind of makes sense that it's this big crescendo of events and climaxing and all that. So that being said, as an ending, did you think it was a satisfying ending?
I thought well, it was a surprise, that's for sure. I wasn't really expecting things to go down the way they were. I mean, just like right at the beginning where they even focusing on the first just kind of like stewing in his own like, I'm gonna get you, John, like just gotta figure out how I'm gonna get you, and then along comes, well, who we think little demon Astra, and you're like, oh shit, right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, did you get fooled? Did you think it was Asher the whole time?
Oh, 100%, totally. I was just like, what? She moved up to being like a demon already? Dang.
Yeah, that's one thing about comics that they can do. I mean, I guess you can do it in writing as well, but just like the idea that I think it's harder to do in comics because you have to draw what's going on, and you can't give anything away in the art or in the story. So, um, like the way that he like disguises it. So, and I just totally forgot about Chantanelli as like what's she doing in the background. They don't mention her at all, so it makes perfect sense that that's what she's doing. But because she's got to be doing something. She was with John with the Gabriel and all that. There was some plan that they had come up with, but we weren't privy to that. And when she shows up, when Astra shows up, I didn't even think about Chantanelli from that point on until it was revealed. Oh shit, that's Chantanelli. So
Oh yeah, I totally didn't see that coming. I had completely forgotten about her too. Like I know they had the like, haha, our little plans. Like, oh yeah, we totally got this. I assumed it was just Gabriel. I assumed that that was sort of like the end of it, and then she was gonna go off and do her own thing, and like that was all he needed her help for. So I had no idea there was like a plan B, side to what they wanted to do to deal with the first. So yeah, that was totally out of left field.
yeah, it was I thought it was good like setup. The only thing, I mean, there's obviously like stuff that there's stuff that is like Deus Ex Machina that you just kind of have to like go with. So the idea that the first realizes that he's a demon or that he's not a demon, and then we're just finding out about that as he kills, the two other kings of hell. So like you just have to be like, okay, I guess he figured that out. We didn't see that or anything. We're gonna go with it, I guess. Like he realized he doesn't have to abide by these rules. He was just doing it because he thought he had to. And then uh and then the whole like Astra makes or Shentinelli makes the dagger out of the demon king that's all yellow or whatever. Like
Well, I think she does it out of both of them, right? Because there's bits of both of them left over, and so somehow she's able to take their tattered souls and forge it into a weapon. Like, yeah, okay, so there's definitely some suspension of disbelief. It was like, how'd she know she could do that? how could she do that, even if she knew she wanted to do it? Like, what gave her the power to do it? And then also, yeah, the first just being like, oh, yeah, hey guys, just what? You know what? I totally realized I'm better than you and I'm going to kill you. And you're like, oh, okay. I guess he just did some soul searching and figured out, his inner non-demonness. Like, okay, cool, cool. I guess you just, like you said, have to kind of allow it to happen because with everything going on, maybe there wasn't a way to succinctly like decide, hey, we're going to show him go on this quest and climb a mountain and discover inner peace or self or whatever and realize who he is. So they kind of just cut that short and just make him like, you know what? I'm so awesome. I figured this out just by thinking about it.
Right. And I mean, in that way, it kind of makes sense because he is Satan or whatever. So, but you would think. I mean, I guess maybe he just never had to think about it, and John was the one who like forced him to be like, "How can I do bad things to John?" And he's like, "Wait, I'm not bound by these things. I just realized I'm not a demon." So like, maybe just you need that push. It's like someone who's got a mental block about like what they can actually do versus what they think they can do, where they like it's like people sometimes have they think they're not capable of something, and then they realize, oh wait, no, I can totally do this thing. I just have to like work hard at it. But with Satan, it's like, oh, I just don't have to do those rules that the demons have to abide by. So
It kind of takes someone like John to bring that out of him to where he has to, like you said, look so deep inside and figure out how the hell can he get back at John that he has to, do a complete mental breakdown almost of like every possible way that he could possibly get back at him. So yeah.
Yeah, he had to go through all the different ways in order to get to that level where he's like, wait, do I actually have to follow these rules? I think I'm beyond them. So
Yeah.
yeah. But we just didn't see that like inner thought process, I guess, for him. But you think they could have put like a panel or two of like him reading some ancient text and then realizing, wait a second, like I'm not a demon. Like
But would there be some like crazy ancient text in the bowels of hell that would regard him? Okay, yes, that's true. They could have just come up with something to explain away, like Gandalf looking through all the fucking maps and bowels of the castle and being like, "Oh, the one piece of information I needed. Here it is."
yeah, that's they could have done that. I mean, I see also that is a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but or like a very easily explaining thing. So just write a piece. There's an evil book that explains it. That's all.
The book of explaining evil things.
Exactly. So it would just be like more to hold the reader's hand. So I guess that's why maybe he didn't do it because he's like, you'll get it. It's not that important. He just figured it out. That's all you need to know. So, but yeah, so that's like the main storyline. That's what's going on, obviously. But we got the two side storylines. We got George's storyline, and we got, oh man, what's her name?
Holly?
Linda? Holly?
Allie?
Yes, something like that. Can't remember exactly. The girl that John used to date that is a prostitute
the ex-girl,
now. Yeah.
The druggie / prostitute.
Yeah. So what'd you think of those two storylines?
Hannah?
No, it's not Hannah. I don't know.
Well, I mean, they're both like intense in their own way. You have one dealing with, racism and a literal riot, and then you have another one dealing with drug addiction and prostitution. And while obviously one is bigger on the social scope of involving more people, the other one is very intense sort of personal story. So I think they both carry their own weight. And the fact that he threw them into the same arc at the same time, and John has to literally choose at some points who he's got to help at that moment. He finds out about his friend, and then he finds out about George. And when he goes to try to help George, something happens to his friend. And then when he goes to her, the stuff with George gets worse. So it's it's a horrible balancing act he has to make of where he can't be in two places at once, and he has to be in one or the other. And then at some point he's just like, you know what, Kit, hey Kit, how's it going? Let's take a breather and let everybody else deal with their stuff for a little while.
Yeah, now that you say that, one's personal and one's kind of wide scope social stuff. That makes sense. Like one is focused on this one individual, and the other is focused on like this group of people that are being, pushed down by the government and stuff. Like it does. I think. I mean, obviously, it was intentional because you put it in there. But like some people throw that stuff in and don't actually think about it. And I this is like the first time I'm actually thinking about how he did it, as far as like writing. Like, why did he pick those two stories? And it does make sense, like you said, that it's one's very singular, focused on this woman and her experience and what's going on with her, and the other is like this bigger thing that's also causing like societal unrest and whatnot. And John does have to figure out which one's more important at the moment whenever he goes to help them. So it's a good point. I didn't think about that. I just kind of thought, you just kind of think, oh, he's throwing shit at the wall to make John have to like deal with crazy stuff. But one thing I thought was interesting about the personal story with John's ex, the prostitute, is the boyfriend, like or the pimp, I should say. The pimp is someone that John could handle no problem on his own, usually, in any other situation. But the fact that John is dealing with the first and George's thing and all that stuff, and he's dealing with this guy, ends up being like a pretty formidable bad guy in the background. That's just like, oh, is he gonna kill this person? Like, is he gonna kill this woman and John's other friends or his new girlfriend and stuff? So like, I thought it was like interesting the way that he was able to make this person that would normally not be a problem for John to deal with, and made him like a formidable bad guy in the background, like a side bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you
Helen.
feel the same?
Helen.
Helen. Oh, that's right. That's her name.
Took me a second. I'm so bad with names. Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting that this guy was actually proving to be a foe of any sort, when normally it would have just been right when John what he, like headbutts him or punches him or whatever right at the beginning. Or no, he tries to, and the guy like sidesteps him and like karate chops him or whatever, and you're like, seriously, John? Like you fell
Kia.
for that? Like, yeah, Kia. And and that was even a thing that he even got taken by surprise, essentially, and bested. And Chaz has to come in and save the day. That
Yeah, it did give
was so
Chaz a chance
funny.
to shine, so that's nice.
That was kind of, yeah, I think Chaz getting his moment was kind of nice, of being able the one to save John this time. Not that he hasn't saved him like several other times, but in this instance, it was kind of funny that it was such an unassuming moment where you would expect John to be on his game and just be like, "Punch guy, you're down, save girl," and instead it was like, "Whoops." Like karate chop. Oh, he's getting his ass kicked. Here comes Chaz to save the day, and then he still proves to be a nuisance after that, and not just the nuisance because he's horrible, obviously horrible things, but that he keeps coming back to be more of a nuisance. And instead of John just being able to make him go away, there's so much other stuff going on that either his focus is so broken that he doesn't think, oh, I'll just like do a protection spell or something, or some other way to keep his friend Helen safe while she's detoxing, or it just slips his mind that he's not even like think that he's like, it's fine, like he won't, won't take her to the hospital and he'll never find her.
Yeah, she
And
has
like that's the
nurses.
best. Right? Like that's the best that he thinks will work in this situation, and he completely underestimates the guy. So, I think if it were by itself, that one story, actually, that's the thing. If any one of these stories were just by itself and he was only dealing with that at the moment, he would have solved, I think, everything, you know, just being him, being himself. But the fact that he was pulled in all these different directions at the same time kind of let each situation get the best of him. And that anxiety of him being pulled in so many places, I think really worked well for us too, reading that and being like, come on, John, like pull yourself together. And he's just like, I can't deal with this right now. There's so much going on. Everyone wants me to save the world. And I do save the world, but most of the time it's because I just sort of happen to, and I have friends and all my friends are dying. And like, all, he kind of almost has a breakdown when he's like in that church basement. So I think it was a really, really good way to show not only that like he's off his game because everything's happening all at once, but just the overarching fear of the first is also enough to seemingly throw him off too.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing that's interesting about the different storylines is John wants to help George, but George is like in his own war. Like most of it doesn't actually, like John can't really do anything to help George other than like if he needed a gun or something, or if he needed some kind of information about something. But John's not going to be able to stop the police from murdering all the people in this neighborhood or whatever. So, um, as we're cutting back and forth between John and George and Helen's story, like the Helen one is kind of interesting just because it does, like, John could do more for her, but he's so distracted by the first, and then also what's going on with the city around where, you know, he needs to confront the first at Nigel's house and stuff. Um, it's like, yeah, I don't know. George's storyline is kind of unique. Did you have any thoughts about that storyline overall?
I thought it was a bold move to make right at the end to have this culmination where he had the little nuggets of, you know, what happened to his brother, obviously before when his brother was murdered, and then having George sort of like get his revenge by killing the guy who murdered his brother, or at least, you know, facilitated all that, the kidnapping and everything. I can't remember if if that guy actually.
I think he had his goons cut his brother and beat him up. Yeah.
Right, okay, but he was still, like, the guy, the mastermind of that whole situation, and so I actually hadn't expected to see George come back or that ever be, you know, that whole situation escalate or be brought back again, so that was a surprise, and I do think it was the best time to do it. I don't know if he'd had more time, if he might have, like, pushed it out later or dived into it further, maybe expanded on that whole, because it did sort of happen very quickly, you know? Like, everything just sort of culminated really quickly, so I don't know if maybe he had ever planned to do more with it at a later date and was like, "Oh, no, this is the end. Okay, let's just, you know, have all these things happen at once." Um, but I thought it was really well done, you know? You really felt for everyone involved, just not only George, but all of his friends, all of the people living there who just wanted to live their damn lives, you know? Like, it was very, very sad, but very unfortunately relevant conversation to have.
Yeah, it's amazing how you're reading this, you're like, wait a second, is this about today or what's going on? It's like the history, I mean, the dates are different, but the same shit's still happening. So,
Right?
yeah, but
Unfortunately, still relevant.
yeah, but one thing about the George storyline, you know, he like it's fun. Like it's kind of like John with all of his friends. Like all of George's friends die in this whole thing, and I did not think that was going to happen. I knew people were going to get hurt, but the fact that they built like this cast around George that are like his friends that we meet, and then they literally just kill them off like one by one. I thought that was pretty shocking. Now sometimes Garth Ennis gets accused of being an edge lord kind of guy or whatever, like edgy just for edgy's sake. Did you think that built tension like in the story correctly and that's why it was there, or did you think he was just trying to be over the top with this story arc?
Well, I do know that when John and George meet up again, kind of after all of this has ended, and John being like, you know, I can't really, you know, say that I know what you're going through, even though technically he can, because you know they both just kind of lost all their friends, and but he probably just doesn't want to say it because it'll sound like a platitude. But I mean, as much as I hate seeing, you know, characters, especially when they're just seemingly just introduced to die, is kind of the way it seems, just because, you know, oh, here's all these people and their names and they're dead, which seems to happen all the time to John, but to see it happen to someone else was also quite a bit shocking. But I think it was a good choice because it shows, well, one, when you make choices that affect other people, it sometimes affects other people in horrible ways, which is sort of what John does all the time. He makes these choices to either involve his friends or not tell them something, and either choice usually ends up bad for them based on just what he decides to do at the time. So yeah, I think it was really, really sad and much more poignant because it shows like, hey, you know, you made this decision and this is how it all turned out. And for John to be like, don't forget about that, you know, keep that close so that hopefully, you'll make better decisions in the future. Because I think he's even saying that to himself, like he needs to make better decisions all the time. And he still always gets into these ruts where, yeah, his friends get killed for helping him. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, kind of edge lordy, but there's some like George R. R. Martin kills people off all the time, and people don't call him an edge lord. So I don't know.
That's because he sounds like Chief Wiggum. If you sound like Chief Wiggum, you can't be an edgelord.
He totally does. Oh my gosh, it's so funny to hear him speak live one time.
Yeah,
would not have
I heard it
expected
once.
that
I'm
voice
like,
at all.
no, that's not how I want my George R. R. Martin to sound. And I just
Yeah.
mute him and think he sounds,
Heard him at Comic-Con one time at a Game of Thrones panel before it was still in the middle of everything and it wasn't saying, but happened to get in. And I remember the second he opened his mouth and I was just like, no. Really?
That's what you sound like? How is that possible?
Yeah. So funny. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be either or. It feels like these are very relevant deaths. So if it had been, sort of just mentioning people by name, but them just sort of being like, "Oh, hey, I'm Joe," and then he's dead. It was, they actually interacted. They talked. They even were like, "Hey, we're on your side. We're with you to the end." So that to me was kind of this is probably not going to end well for them, and that's kind of the way it turned out.
Yeah. And well, speaking of the end of that, like that little conversation they have, there is a controversial moment. It is controversial now. I don't know if it was controversial in the 90s. It probably was, but
I would imagine so, but maybe for different reasons.
yeah, maybe for different reasons. But so there's this, and I bring it up in the episode, and I try to give context, at least what I think is context for it. But there's this back and forth little call and response between John and George where George says, "Hey, Whitey, blah, blah, blah." And then John quotes back to him from song lyrics, I believe, don't call me Whitey, N-word. And he says the word. And I read, like, the reason why I brought it up, because obviously it doesn't make any sense that, like, John, who we know is this anti-racist guy, or like this, at least, someone who is seemingly the rest of the run of Hellblazer, even Jamie Delano's run up until this one moment, is very like against racism and like hate. He, in the Jamie Delano run, he hates the Britain boys or whatever they're called, the British boys, and like all that nationalistic stuff. And then we even have like the whole Charlie arc that started this stuff with George and his brother. Charlie, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but Charles is his first name. The guy, the neo-Nazi guy that like killed Dez, George's brother. Like, John is like, "Yeah, you're a nationalist piece of shit, white supremacist." And then he says this line or this sentence to George where he says the N-word to him or calls him that. And I was like, immediately, just like everybody else, you're like, what? Like, what just happened? And then you just kind of like, in my mind, I'm like, this can't be what he meant. But it seems like, and this is why I brought it up and kind of talked about it in the episode, was it seems like everybody else that in the recent like articles of this run or about this run are just like, yeah, that's really weird that John gets racist for a second and then goes back to not being. And I'm like, that's not what happened. I don't think, at least. So in my mind, just because I know the song that he's referencing, I was like, wait, I think this is that song, and they're just quoting it to each other. But John says the white guy's part in the song, which includes the N-word, and it's kind of like an inside joke between them or something. And it would be like if someone quoted WAP in 40 years, and people were just like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what? Why are you being so vulgar talking about wet ass pussies or whatever?" And it's like, oh, no one remembers this song from 40 years ago. So yeah, it's a weird moment.
Quoting Sir Mix-a-Lot, and that song had fallen out of memory, and people were like, what butts? Like, what?
Yeah, what are we talking? Yeah, it'd be like if butts fell out of fashion too. Like, like just in 40 years, none of this is popular, and people are like, why does he want butts? Why is he obsessed with butts? I don't understand. And yeah, but like this was just worse because it's like racism, and that's the whole point of the story, and it makes it seem like John is racist in the middle of this racist riot that's going on, and And like George had all of his friends get murdered by the police and all this stuff. So it's a very weird scene nowadays, but I think it was less weird in the 90s, and I think it makes more sense if you know that song. And I just happen to know that song because in music school I had to listen to a lot of soul music from the late 60s, early 70s. So yeah, it was kind of weird, and I never saw anybody mention that, and I thought that I was like, I gotta say this at least. It might not be what Garth Ennis was going for or what he was doing, but it's, to me, it's almost impossible that that couldn't be him quoting that because it's verbatim the song. So I don't know. What did you think about that overall, in context or just in general, reading it the first time, or hearing that the first time and then being like, what? and then learning the context.
I think without the context that you provided, I certainly would have been like, "Huh? What?" Like, I would definitely have that reaction of like, "Why, John? Why would you say that? That's so out of character for you." But at the same time, I would be like, "There should be a reason why that would be there. Everything else so far, there has been a reason for things being said and done. So it would be completely out of character for it to just be thrown in there for no reason, or for him to just suddenly have like what people seem to assume is a sudden character shift that just is like, yeah, I'm going to say this word now and then never say it again in this context. And yeah, so I would probably be a little confused about what the reason would be to have that line in there. But at the same time, I would still be like, well, there's definitely a reason for that. It's not just a sudden character shift that would be completely out of character for the writer and the character. So yeah, I would say I'm glad that you were able to find a plausible explanation for it. It's still really kind of a messed up joke, and I don't know how well it flew back then, but obviously in today's climate it does not fly very well. Even if you explain the context of it, it's kind of like, well, it's still a that was a risky choice, and not maybe the best move to make. I'm not sure how he explained that to the to the higher ups. Like, hey, so I'm going to put this in here, and people will get it. It's totally fine. It's totally
Yeah,
fine.
everybody
Don't
knows this song,
worry.
right?
So, I mean, it was definitely a bold move to include it in there, and uh, I kind of do wish people would at least try to figure out the why behind it. And do it sounds like you didn't have to look too hard to figure it out, so it kind of seems like it wouldn't be something that most people couldn't figure out for themselves, instead of simply being like, "Oh," and pro question to be like, Why would he do such a thing, the racist asshole?"
Yeah. Well, I think, when I looked it up, I thought for sure people have talked about, like, have found out that, like, done an article about, oh, this is from a song. Yes, it's in poor taste. Definitely wouldn't have it nowadays, but this is a song that he's quoting. And no one said that. And that was the thing. Like, people were saying that when I read articles about it, that, like, that one panel and that one line just tarnished all of Garth Ennis's run, because they literally were like, it's racism out of nowhere that never comes back again, and why would he do this to this character? And I'm like, really? You think that that's just what happened, when the whole rest of the run is all about like how not racist John is for the most part? Like, at least like how he's against nationalism and white supremacy and all that stuff. So I thought it was interesting that like no one else brought it up. So that's why I was like, let me just throw this out there. I don't know if it's true, because once again, these articles don't really go to him for quotes, and I don't know if Garth Ennis would ever say like, this is what I meant. But no one's ever asked him like, why'd you do that? Like, what was your thought process behind throwing the N-word in John's mouth at the end there? So I just figured, let me just throw this out there, because the second I read it, I was like, wait a second. This is a very familiar line to me for some reason. Then I was like, wait, that's that song from Sly and the Family Stone. So that makes sense to me. But if you don't have that context, I could see where you're just like, what? And then you try to look it up on the internet, and there's no conversation other than this was bad. So like, there's no like, no one's pointing out that this is the context. So that's why I was like, I'm going to point that out. I don't know if it's actually the context, what he was going for, but to me, it was the only plausible reason why he would say those exact words in that exact order, with George also saying the exact words as well. Like they did a call and response that's in that song. So I thought it was important to point out, but if anyone else has any other explanations about what they think that was and why he put it in there, feel free to comment, on this on the video or the podcast notes and whatnot. But yeah, so I just thought that was interesting and like a controversial moment that some people say tarnished the run. Do you feel like it tarnishes the run at all?
No, I think that when you provide a potential explanation, at least the one that sounds the most logical, it's an inside joke. It's in poor taste, 100%, but it's still a joke between two characters, two I would want to say maybe friends, acquaintances, possibly, but at least they went through something together. They're having a moment of levity after horrible shit has gone down. So yes, is it the kind of joke you could make today? Probably not. Probably not even in that context. But for that moment of its time, in that specific space, it fits, just not very well. Like there is seemingly an explanation for it, but what can you do at this point except say, "Oh, well, that was in poor taste," but it does not, to me, taint the entire run or anything else that he's done to have chosen a particular kind of joke to make that just is not the best thing you could have said. So,
Yeah, maybe pick a more relevant song. I don't know.
yeah, or maybe just don't use that particular word even in jest. That's just any other lyrics would probably have been fine, but that particular one, not
How
the
about
best
"You Got a Friend in
idea.
Me"? That was popular at this time, I think.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one to do. Got a friend in me too, George.
Yeah.
I'll see you.
I'll see you. Exactly. And then like George could have said, well, some people talking, but your old pal said, and then they just go back and forth and have that back and forth instead
There
of
you go.
yeah.
See,
uh
but maybe in that instance, maybe that was sort of an instance of sort of an edgelord feel to it, which is like, I'm going to use that word and it's going to be in context, so I can't get in trouble for it. So,
Maybe, I don't know. It didn't seem like he wanted to throw it around in any other stuff. Like in other runs of Garth Ennis's stuff that I've read, like he did Punisher, he did like a bunch of Max stuff for Marvel with like Nick Fury and stuff. People say slurs all the time, and it's in context, so like it's in character. And I think the reason why people like bristle at this one so much is because it's John saying it, and we do know that he's so like not that's not him, and it feels very weird. So I don't think he threw it in to be an edgelord. I just think he didn't think it was gonna be a song that people didn't remember in 30 years or whatever, and you know have no context for what it is. And I don't. I didn't see any articles from 1996 or whatever talking about this. So I think maybe either people remembered the song and they knew what he was referencing and they were fine with what he said. And it was, yeah, it's edgy, like, because John himself is an asshole and edgy. So it's not necessarily out of character for him to say something like that in context of him quoting song lyrics. But, um, but it definitely, now if you don't know the song, it just looks really bad. So, um, yeah, yeah, it's a weird moment for sure nowadays if you read it without that context, and even with the context. But you at least with the context, at least what I assume is the context. I'm assuming because maybe if I get to meet Garth Ennis someday, I'll be like, hey, truth talk, you were quoting that song, right? Like, and he'll be like, either yes or like, no, I just wanted to throw the N word in there, and I'm like, oh, damn it.
all that research you did for nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
What? Wait, there's a song?
What song? Yeah, that's all. He wouldn't even need to say anything else. But song, and then
What
fuck.
song?
Never mind. But I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that's not what he was referencing. So, but anyway, so the whole run ends with the first of the Fallen getting stabbed in the back by Chantinelli with this dagger made from the other kings of hell, and John ends up escaping the wrath of him because he is killed. So, did you think that this Garth Ennis run as a whole, what did you think of it? Like from beginning to end, all the ups and downs, did you like it as a run?
I thought it was great. It kept me on my toes the whole time. You never knew where the hell a story was going. Even just the first issue of each arc would present a situation that you're just like, where the hell is this going? Like, what on earth are they going to do? And that's the best kind of storytelling to me. Whereas one, a crazy situation usually, so it keeps your attention because you're like, I've never come across this before. This is insane. Like the royal family one was just bonkers, you know? That would never have expected in a billion years to read something like that. Even in Hellblazer, like that was insane. So yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing run. It had such great stories in it. There were a few that were like, it was okay, but still, even if it wasn't like the best storyline, it was still intriguing and it was still you wanted to know what was going to happen, and those are the best kind of stories to read.
Yeah, I thought like even those stories that I was kind of like, this is weird, like almost a little too weird for me. Like specifically the one where he goes to New York and it's like the witch walking with Papa Midnight and stuff. Like I thought that one was weird, especially reading it. I had to do like a fucking JFK accent the whole time and everything. I was like, God damn it.
Which I loved that, by the way. That was amazing. Well done, I think. I think you did a great job of imitating, but not impersonating. Where you didn't make him sound so clownishly Mayor Quimby or whatever, but it still sounded like enough like him that I was like, oh yeah, that totally sounds like him.
Well, thank you. It was definitely annoying to do though, to record. Just trying to get it down, and I had to like watch speeches from him and stuff. So it was like it was fun. It's always fun afterwards. It's kind of like any creative thing you do. Doing it sucks. Afterwards, you're like, oh man, I did that. That was fun. So,
Yeah, you have that under your belt.
yeah, but I think like one thing that he does is even if there's an arc that I'm not necessarily like that fond of or I think is important necessarily, they always have moments or things in them that do either lead into future storylines or have ramifications that affect future storylines. So like for example, right after Dangerous Habits, that starts this whole thing where he gets cancer and he fools Satan. There's that little 2-issue story arc about the couple that gets their bar burned down and they die in it and stuff, and they like start possessing people. In that, the guy that burns down the bar has a shotgun, and that's the shotgun that George ends up getting that starts this whole thing. Like, so it's like he ties all this stuff together with little like things that connect, even though you might not care for that couple storyline, but oh, the gun is from there. They mention the guy every now and then. Like, oh,
Oh my gosh, I did
yeah.
not realize that.
Yeah, like they just name drop him. They say like, "Oh, I know this guy's got a shotgun," and then someone goes, "I thought he was dead," and they go, "Oh yeah, he did die," and then but maybe he's still got it at his house or something, and then that's where George goes to get the gun. So it's like,
Oh, I totally missed that. I did not catch that at all.
yeah. So like like you missed it. It still was fine, for the story going overall. Like you didn't actually miss anything, but there's little Easter eggs like that happen. That have ramifications if you know about them, later on. So
Well, that's really cool. I love breadcrumbs. I love Easter eggs. Those, especially when you catch them or finding out after the fact, is still pretty cool. Because I'm like, oh, like he had to think about that, to put it in there as like a tiny little tidbit that connects it to something else. So I actually did like that story. I thought it was cute. It was horrible, but it was also like, oh, a couple are in love, and then they're killing people. Oh.
yeah, and it's I always think like, did he always plan on that gun being later on, like the very end of this run? It's the beginning of the run and at the end of the run. Did he anticipate that, or did he just be like, hey, this is like, was he thinking like, this is my Chekhov's gun, like I'm putting it at the beginning of the run and it's going to come to use later? Or did he just like remember like, hey, George needs to get a gun, hey, there's that gun that guy had, let me just connect those two things like at the, when he's writing it at the end. I always wonder if how far they actually plan it out, and I think it must be like the latter thing where it's like, hey, I need a gun, hey, I used a gun in this last thing, I can just kind of bring that back. Because I mean, it'd be different if it was a book, because that's all like one thing that someone has written and spent time developing. But like a comic, this took place over, this is 40 issues, so that's like 5 years of writing that he would have to like map out everything way ahead of time, and they don't do that normally. I don't think I know of a comic book writer that takes their run and has it broken out 4 years in advance, at least that I know of. I haven't heard anybody doing that. So they might have a general idea of like, oh, this is going to be like this story beat, then it's got to get to this story beat, then the end, but they don't know like the stuff in between enough to to have the idea to put the gun here so that it shows up in, the last part,
It is such a random thing though that it seems like the sort of thing that would either be in the back of his mind of like, file it away for later. Even if he wasn't planning to use it again, he might have thought maybe I'll find some place to put it. Just because it's such a small thing that it would be kind of weird to be, to have that moment of like, what about a gun? Oh yeah, wasn't there that gun? Like that it seems like such an odd thing to have like stumbled upon later on that it wouldn't be something that was at least that tidbit of like gun question mark, where can I use it again sort of thing. You know what? You can ask him after you ask him about the song lyrics.
Yeah, that's true. I'll ask him. It could also be that I'm an American thinking about this from an American brain. If you want a gun, go buy a gun. It's not that hard. But in Britain, that is not the case. So maybe the idea that there was a gun around in a previous story, let's just continue using that same gun makes more sense.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, like where's George gonna get a gun?
Right. It's not like you could just be like, "Hey, I'm gonna walk into Walmart and get a gun." It's more of like a, "Oh, who could possibly have gun?" And so that, yeah, you're right. That gun would be something more like, you know, knowing where a grenade is or something, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Who's got a bazooka? I don't,
Yeah.
Now, what kind of tanks do I know someone has? Like, yeah, that's what we'd have to equate it to, I guess, over here. But
Oh yeah, didn't that couple have a tank in their backyard? You think I could borrow it? I think they're dead. Oh, well, cool. I'll just go over there and grab it then. They probably left the keys somewhere, you
it's probably there. It's got diesel in the engine. It's good to go. So, yeah, that's probably what it is more than he thought about it like really hard and was planning on it or something. It's just like, well, he needed a gun. He remembered that there was a gun that's kind of left in this story that hasn't been talked about or touched. So if that obviously that guy got the gun from somewhere or had it, so George might be able to figure that out. So that makes more sense, I think. I just kind of parsing through that in my head as we're talking about this, but yeah. So you liked Garth Ennis's run overall. You thought it was fairly strong. How do you rate it against Jamie Delano's run?
Ooh, that's a tough one because there's a lot that started, right, with Jamie Delano's run because it's the first one, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my brain is getting confused for a second, but yeah, okay. So I mean, well, that's not fair because that's like comparing someone who writes, the very first version of it'd be like the very first X-Men or something, and then comparing it to a later run of X-Men, like
Because it's
when
building off
you
of it.
can exactly. So like even if the first run isn't the strongest, it's still the bare bones of where it began. So I think I would say it's at least equal because for me it's hard to compare an origin to what can be built afterward. I suppose if you want to get technical, it'd be like comparing, Star Wars originals versus the episodes 1 through 3. Yes, it's technically a prequel, but it's built off of a lot of what they already established in the lore. So when people say, "Oh, this is the best trilogy" versus "this is the best trilogy," I kind of have to say it's all sort of equal because you have one is the origin story, and two, it built off of it. And yes, you wouldn't have all this awesomeness without the origin, but at the same time, if you didn't have, something to build off of, then you have nothing. So, and I don't know. I'd say it's equal, but at the same time, I think they both have their pluses and their minuses. So I can't choose. I really can't.
Okay, well, what about just like enjoyment? Like, did you enjoy reading Garth Ennis's run more than Jamie Delano's?
Yes, okay, I will say that. I did enjoy it more.
Okay, there you go. Well, we both know how we feel about Fear Machine, so.
Yes, exactly. So that is probably the only reason I would say that Garth Ennis's run was more enjoyable, both because he went in crazy directions and brought up a lot of really great characters, brought up a lot of amazing storylines. But obviously Delano has the origin, so there is no John Constantine without him. Or well, obviously Alan Moore if you want to get technical or whatever. So
Yeah, and I think like Delano's run has a different purpose than Garth Ennis's run. So like, and John is also kind of different because Delano was nice enough to to say like, well, John's different now, and then left it at that. So now whatever Garth Ennis does can be accepted as like, oh yeah, John got his twin, and now he's like Magus John. So we can have him do crazy stuff and maybe act out of character a little bit or something, and that's what that is. So um, I like them both. There are definitely storylines in Jamie Delano's run that I like more than storylines in Garth Ennis's run, but I think overall, like if I was going to tell someone to read, like that's one of my things with like people always ask where to start reading with Hellblazer, and a lot of people just say Garth Ennis. Just start with Garth Ennis's first volume and continue, and stop at the end. They don't even say continue. They just say finish the run, and then you've read all you need to with John Constantine. Where I'm like, I always say read the first trade of Jamie Delano's run, and then if you're into it and you like that, you can jump, not you should, you can jump to the Garth Ennis run and start reading there, and it just kind of continues the coolness. But the first trade, actually, it'd be the first two trades because it would be issues 1 through 12 of Jamie Delano's run, because that's the whole Newcastle thing and all that together. And you kind of need to know about Newcastle before you understand what's going on with Astra and all that at the end of Garth Ennis' story, So I think you do need those first 12 issues of Jamie Delano to really set up Garth Ennis' run. But yeah, I think overall it's just Garth Ennis' run is more cohesive as a ongoing storyline. Whereas maybe not even more cohesive, but it seems like all the stories flow one into the other right away perfectly. Whereas some of the run of Jamie Delano's stuff is like broken up a little bit more with like, oh, why are we focusing on John as a little boy? Or, oh, now we have two like random issues in between, and like John had the Family Man thing going on. Then we have two, like a Grant Morrison issue or two Grant Morrison issues and a Neil Gaiman issue. And then we're back into the Family Man for some reason. Why do we do all that? Who knows? It's just kind of like, it's a little bit more disjointed, but there are some very cool storylines in Jamie Delano's run. So, for me, I will always love Jamie Delano's run just a little bit more than Garth Ennis's, but I think Garth Ennis's is more like of a full, complete story overall, like a thread all the way through it,
Yeah, I would agree that you could start at the beginning of Jamie Delano's run because that is important to the character to know those Newcastle, like you said. And also, I loved the first issues. I thought that was such a great way to set it up with, this giant fly demon and his friend being in trouble, and it'd be like, John, help me. And then you realize, oh, like he deals with this stuff, he knows magic. I think it's like almost like a perfect beginning to just jumping into who a character is and what he does. And introducing a character like Papa Midnight, who sadly did not get as much influence as I would have liked.
Oh man, I wish he got more screen time. I like that character a lot.
Me too.
He's only in issues 1 and 2, and then he's in like the last like witch walking section.
Yeah, that last section, which I expected more from him. I really did. I thought he was I thought he was going to be a much bigger part of, the series in general. But anyway, yeah, I think definitely starting there, because again, like you said, if they jump straight to Grant Morrison, they don't know anything about Newcastle, about Astra, or Papa Midnight. Like they won't.
Oh, you mean Garth Ennis?
Sorry, Garth Ennis. They won't know anything about like what happened back then and why is it relevant to all this stuff, which to me is kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like cutting the character short. Like you don't understand a lot of where he came from, especially the whole twin thing. I mean, yes, that stuff's all weird, but it is important to know like what has transpired before you get to this point. So I don't know. I do agree that I get more enjoyment out of Garth Ennis's run, but I also think that Jamie Delano's run is important because it does show where he comes from. And I don't know, I personally like to read things in order. So I don't really like jumping around to being like, oh, you want to get to know this character? Well, just read this random issue here and that's all you need to know. And it's like, no, that's so limiting, You should be able to explore more about the character, see his ups and downs. see all the craziness that he goes through. And sure, it might be slow and boring at some points where you're just like, oh my gosh, what is this even about? If you're a machine. But but it's still important to know who these characters are and see how the journey goes. I don't know. I think it's weird to completely cut off everything else about a character and just be like, no, this is all that's important. That's kind of a slap in the face to all those other creators, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I think, there's a lot of stuff to mine, and that's very interesting in Jamie Delano's run. And I mean, Garth Ennis did mine a lot of that for his run. So I think, and even more than that, the writers that continue, like um, Paul Jenkins, who writes the next big story arc or big story run, um, that totally goes off of both the Garth Ennis run and Jamie Delano's run. So I like I like it when people kind of pull from those things and use the runs before them. And I like that Garth Ennis did that, with Papa Midnight and Astra and all that. So even though he created a lot of his own lore in it, he still was able to like pay respect to Jamie Delano's stuff. Although I do know some people that think that Garth Ennis's run is garbage compared to Jamie Delano's. So, to each his own. But but speaking of like runs that you like and whatnot, I know you're a big Sandman fan. I know you love Sandman is
Yeah.
your pinnacle of what a fantastic comic run is. So how does Garth Ennis's run of Hellblazer compare to the run of Sandman that you love, and that's your like 10, right?
Well, that's not fair because I'm gonna pick
I
Sandman.
just mean your rating. Like if not that you're gonna like pick it over Sandman. I mean like if Sandman is your 10, what is your Garth Ennis Hellblazer?
Ooh, okay. I would probably give it like a really strong 8.5 because there are moments in there that I'm like, there were some moments that aren't necessarily my favorite. Strong or not, I don't think really is the opinion you want to go for. It's just enjoyment level is usually what I place it on. Even if something's weird, even if you have those moments of like, well, that doesn't make sense, but I'm still enjoying the ride. Uh, I'll admit, even Sad Man has those moments when you're like, what? So, nothing is perfect, but yes, just for sheer nostalgia value of loving Sandman for as long as I have, and that being my 10, yeah, I would say his run gets an 8.5.
Okay, I think that's pretty strong. I think that's fair for like against your favorite thing of all time. So
Yeah. So like in comparison, I would say Jamie Delano's run would probably have an 8. It's pretty darn close. And I would only compare them in this way just because I get just a smidge more enjoyment out of reading Ennis's run than Delano's, and we know why. So so 8.5, they're pretty darn close, I would say.
yeah, okay, cool. So that's the end of the Garth Ennis run, but then we have a one shot before we get into the next story arc by Eddie Campbell, and that is finally. Well, first off, Jamie Delano returns to like have a little fun
And
issue.
what a return he makes, man.
Yeah,
Oh
and
boy.
man, it is a weird issue about why Chaz owes John. So it's very interesting this whole time through the last 83 issues of this comic. There's always been the like John saying, well, you owe me, Chaz, and Chaz being like, you're right, I owe you. So finally, this issue is the why owes John. What did you think of that origin of why Chaz owes John?
This felt like a story where they put a bunch of ideas in a hat and picked out a few pieces of paper and were like, so let's mix this up real quick. Okay, so Chaz owes John because his mother had a monkey who she psychically connected to, and John kills the monkey for him. you know, like it literally felt like one of those, like a Mad Lib or something, because it was the craziest thing. And saying this with all the crazy shit that has happened up to this point, you pull something like this, it literally came out of left field. And then of all the things that Chaz could have owed John for, killing his mother and the fact that there's a monkey involved, and it's the weirdest thing. I never would have expected. I did not expect it at all. Never would have thought that this was the reason why. Even when I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be something big. It's got to be something that he really, really helped him out with. It was. Oh man, it was so weird. He has to do some monkey. I mean, again, like Mad Libs, total Mad Libs, insanity.
Just walking around the house with his shirt off, like, hey,
Oh my
monkey.
gosh. Oh my gosh. And then the fact that the monkey and the mom are connected, so technically the mom seemed to, just like so disturbing.
Yeah, I remember reading this and being like, what the fuck? Just okay. And I think that was on purpose. I think they were like, let's give it the weirdest origin possible. We've teased this forever.
We have to meet people's expectations and then go beyond them. And they definitely succeeded in that.
Yeah, well, I think the idea that like, oh, he owes him because John took out his mom, who was like horrible, makes sense. Like that makes like sense as far as John as a character, what he would do. It's the monkey thing that is the weird part.
Yeah.
And I think he was just like, let's have fun with this or something. So I feel like it does like it fits within the established lore of John's character. Do you think it fits in there?
Well, it's pre-magic, right? He wasn't even really
He's aware of it.
dabbling in any of that stuff. Like not full on like, oh yeah, I can totally do magic and I'm gonna use magic to help you. No, this was just him being like, yeah, I'm gonna seduce this monkey and then I'm gonna kill it. Like, and it's just the weirdest thing.
Well, I think he does know some magic now because there's that storyline in Delano's run with Hellblazer's father, with John's father, where he has books of magic that he tries to enact on his father, like where his dad can't die, or his dad is dying because it's connected to that cat that's dead. So like he does, this is after that, because this is when he moves to London on his own. So it's after he might be late teenagers, like 18, 19 or something. But that's when he moves to London. This is technically after that issue, like when he's coming down from wherever he's from, Liverpool or whatever, to go to London, and he gets almost sexually assaulted by that priest. That's where he was going after this. That's when he met Chaz, and he was going to stay with Chaz, I believe. I think that's the timeline.
Okay, so he knows of magic, but it's not like he used magic to solve this problem. He still only just used.
No, but I think he recognized that there was a link. There's a psychic link, so he knew that, right? So
right. So, but it's still not like he was like, I'm going to do a spell or I'm going to like, do some glyphs or something to figure this out. It was literally just seduce the monkey. But yes, him being magically prone meant he could figure out that, okay, yeah, there's definitely something going on here psychically, magically, that she's connected to the monkey. And Chaz is just sort of like, she can use the monkey. I don't get it. And so John's like, yes, okay, there's something otherworldly happening here, but still I'm just going to literally drown this monkey. And God, I can't even say that with like a straight face.
To be fair,
so
it's
random.
a chimpanzee, not a monkey.
Okay, yes, sorry. Chimpanzee. Yes, sorry. Do no disrespect to my sapien brethren, but how dare I? Okay, my animalia is confused.
Yeah, Caesar's gonna get mad. He's gonna attack you.
Okay, yeah. So definitely he knew what magic was. He sensed or understood that there was something going on here, but he still didn't use magic to solve this problem. He used his bare hands and sexual feelings to solve this problem for Chaz.
And I will say that fits in line with Jamie Delano's run of John. In his run, John is very much less magical than in the Garth Ennis run. He doesn't flippantly use magic, and he's more sexual. At least like in like as far as like Marge and all those, like he seems like he's more like that's more of his thing than in the Garth Ennis run. Obviously he has sex and stuff, but like he's in a relationship, so it's just with Kit and whatnot. But in this, it feels like he's kind of his classic John, which makes sense because it is young John, right? So it was good to have Jamie Delano write this issue, I feel.
Oh yeah, totally. I think that it was, I mean, after being so in depth with Garth Ennis's run, it was almost like a breath of fresh air to be able to go back to like a Delano story and yeah, kind of get a flashback to young John and young Chaz. And I did kind of like how it was also, you know, a flash forward. Well, it was a current story that he was flashing back to instead of just a straight flashback story. So it still kept you in the present of like this is what's going on, and you know Chaz is a grandfather now, and that you know is what triggers this whole you know spiral into the past. So I did like that it was still grounded in the present, but it also still allowed a story to be told about like yet another story from John's past and Chaz's past that we had no clue about.
Yeah, yeah, I liked it a lot, even though it is weird. I mean, it's once you like kind of wrap your head around it, it's fun. So, do you think it was like a satisfying explanation of their whole relationship dynamic of owing John and all that?
I mean, I definitely think he owes him for that.
True, it's true.
And I, as whatever I thought that it could have been, I never would have thought of this. So, you know, kudos for throwing us something totally crazy out there that no one could have seen coming.
Yeah, that is very true. No one would definitely have thought, oh yeah, John owes him because he killed the monkey that was psychically linked to Chaz's mom, which also killed Chaz's mom and freed him. Got it. Totally guessed that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, would not have put money on that.
yeah. So that's like the end of this little chunk, which kind of wraps up the Garth Ennis story or the Garth Ennis run completely. Um, where do you think John is going next? Do you have any ideas, or do you just think, who knows, it could go anywhere?
Well, he managed to both get more of his friends killed and defeat the big bad yet again. So I'm kind of curious who the next big bad is going to be. Like where and if he's going to get any new friends, maybe because you know, I don't think he has very many left, if any.
That's gotta be a ongoing thing later on in Hellblazer. Is like every arc or every run that that an author does, like he builds up a friend group and then murders them all and then leaves the next guy with a free open slate to add new friends. It seems like that's what's going on. I don't know.
And potentially new relationships because I don't think he's going to still be with his girlfriend after all this that just happened either, huh?
Oh, you mean the girlfriend that's though he did cheat on her with Kit,
Yeah, exactly. So
technically.
I don't really Sarah, I think her name was, right?
Sure, I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure he's if he hasn't already, like at the end of that, if he hadn't decided to end it, I'm pretty sure they're not still going to be together when the next issue starts. So that also frees him up for a new relationship.
This is true. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of seems like how they're going. Obviously, there's only been two runs, so the third one we'll have to see what they what entails for John's life. But yeah, anything else I missed or anything you want to discuss?
Well, I will say it was kind of a mean trick to make me think that he and Kit were getting back together because I did have that oh moment of thinking that they might actually like she was going to come back, she was going to be part of the storyline again, and it was mostly just a you know a one and done like this was our goodbye, and then her leaving again. So I was kind of like, oh, that's a bummer. It was nice, but it was also still a little bit of a bummer because I liked her and I would have liked to have seen more of her, like, see her come back to his life, even if they tried to just be friends. I knew there would be some tension there and, you know, probably
But
end up getting
if
back
she's gonna
together
be friends
anyway,
with
but
John, she can die. You can't be friends
oh,
with
that's
John.
true. That is true. Okay, she's safer where she is then, as sad as that makes me, because I really liked their dynamic. I thought they did really well, though he was definitely a jerk and an asshole a lot of the time. But and I guess he even did admit, like, "I would do anything for you," and then he's like, "Well, not really. I know myself. I wouldn't change at all." So he knew that inside. So it still made me sad. But I would like to know if you had a favorite cover from this arc.
I think my favorite cover is the last issue of Garth Ennis's run, which is just John like with his hair tousled and he's smiling and he's smoking. It's just classic John. I love that cover. Every time I see it, it kind of makes me smile. So I like that one a lot.
Almost like his A face.
Yeah, and it's also perfect because it's like, oh, he wins in this issue. We know the end of it. Everything's good, or not everything's good, but it wraps up everything. And John's that scrappy little, so and so he always is. So, did you have a favorite cover?
I actually liked almost the opposite feeling where he's crouched in front of the stained glass window and there's all those uh you know sigils that he put all over everything, and he's like looking, depressed, worried, beaten down, he's not sure. And so that cover to me was just like, oh, what's gonna happen? Like he's obviously in a bad place. He's hiding. Like what it made me feel like that issue was gonna have more of a, it was a very anxious episode, but I also thought it was gonna have more of him and the first. Not so much just the back and forth between him and the priest with a little bit of, side notes of the other characters. So the anticipation of that cover to me felt very, anxious, and I liked the feeling. Even if the issue itself wasn't so epic, I thought that cover was really striking and that it showed John sort of like out of his element and not the rakishly handsome, I figured everything out, I'm all good feeling,
Yeah, 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 for sure. That's a really good cover too. Like you said, it's striking. If I saw that on the stands, I would definitely be like, "What is this?" So, but I think I would do the same with John's big face smiling and stuff too. I'd be like, "What is this?" So, you know what it is? It's Glenn Fabry's amazing covers. I can't like once he started doing the covers on this run, it just to me clicks. Everything's amazing as far as all the covers. It really kind of creates a cohesive thing all through it. So I can't say enough about Glenn Fabry's artwork on all the covers. He started, I think after the Dangerous Habits run, because for sure in Royal Family or Royal Blood, he does all those covers, and
Oh,
those are
I love
like
those covers.
super striking with like Abraxas fucking skull everywhere and all that stuff. So, um, but yeah, so I you got to give him credit for those covers.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
They make set like I would love a book of those covers. Those covers are
Ooh.
gorgeous.
Yeah, actually, I'm not a big fan of like cover books, but I would totally take a book of every one of Glenn Fabry's Hellblazer covers. That mm, I like that.
Especially if they had like, like as an art book, if they had little notes on or like some sketches, pre-sketches of him like assembling the cover, his thoughts on when he was like putting everything in, maybe even some little tidbits about like, oh yeah, and then I did this. I don't know if anybody noticed, but I added this little thing in there, little secret things that maybe he just put in there and we didn't notice. I would love something like that. I love behind the scenes things.
It's always been one of my like hopes in life to be able to buy the original art for the last issue of Hellblazer, or the last issue of this Garth Ennis run with his face, and the painting of Kit standing with her arms around herself on the water's edge or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, that was a great one.
Those two are like two of my favorite covers, and I feel like, oh, if I could have the originals of those, I would fucking love it. And I always hope, like, I mean, I want Hellblazer to sell and do good and be a good character, like a big character that everybody knows. But at the same time, I'm like, don't get too big before like I can afford something like that, um, because most of the stuff I love, good luck getting anything original from that shit because getting a Swamp Thing original, that's not going to happen. So and that's not even a very big character. That's that's like a mid tier. So I think John's kind of in there too. He might be a little bit more popular now because of like the shows and stuff that John's been in, but I'm always like, oh, don't get too popular before I can afford something like the original art for those covers. But those are all paintings, though. I mean, he painted all of those by hand, so that would be pretty awesome to have on your wall.
Oh yeah, that'd be totally sweet. I would love that one from Family Blood. The what was the demon's name again? Barak,
Abraxas.
Barak, Barak. Yeah, where like the Union Jack on the background and his creepy ass bloody face. Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So creepy.
Yeah.
I like how you go for like the classic, like beautiful human pose, and I'm like demon. I need the demon on my wall, looking out over all my horror books and stuff.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I think we've covered everything we can say about the Garth Ennis run of Hellblazer. I enjoyed it. You enjoyed it. And we will look forward to coming back with another Hell Talk for the Eddie Campbell run, which I think is only like 4 or 5 issues or something like that, 6, something like that. So it's not even a run. It's just an arc in between Paul Jenkins' run and Garth Ennis's run. So
so it's like an interlude.
Yeah, it's like a little interlude, which is it's kind of cool. For some reason I thought his run was like at least 12 issues, and then I like looked forward. I'm like, oh no, it's only 5 issues, just 4 issues or something. So, yeah, I think it's issue 88 is the last one of it. So we'll be coming back at 89 or around there with the next Hell Talk. So. If you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email me at Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word, at gmail.com. And of course, you can join the Planes, Trains, and Comic Books Patreon, which you will get access to all of the Hellblazer episodes I'm up to, which as of this week, as of today, actually, is issue number 126, which is almost at the end of the Paul Jenkins run. So if you guys need more Hellblazer and you want to just binge the next 40 issues or so, check that out. You can listen to them all there at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books. And with that,
join us.
Yeah, join us, exactly.
Join us.
And with that, we will see you on the next one.
See you later.
Bye.